Hi, Saurabh.
I can hear
Hi,
you,
can you hear
Siddharth.
me?
Yeah, you can hear me, right? Fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes, Saurabh. Hi.
Hi there.
Hi. Welcome to Kitabi Live, and it's so good to talk to you soon. Yeah, just a
So
different
no,
platform,
my
but I'm
wife
very,
got the
I'm
whole
very,
the iPad set up. So she's suggesting that because she's managed to do this without any technical assistance from Saurabh Mukherjee, she deserves an award, which I think she does. But thank you for inviting me. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, I'm glad you're here. And we actually quite
Yeah,
recently spoke on the podcast about
yeah.
your previous book, Diamonds in the Dust. And if you can't hear, guys in the audience, anyone who can't hear us, just drop in the comments. We'll have a check, right? I think we did a check before this. Everything was working fine. Right. And right at the end, you had mentioned
Yeah,
about your new book, which is about to come
yeah,
out,
yeah, yeah,
Unfiltered, the CEO
yeah.
and the Coach, which is what we're going to talk about today. Yes, heck, okay, there it is. It's recently come out a few days back, and it's been getting really positive reviews online. So I'm glad that's happening. But sort of here's what we're going to
Mhm.
do. Just to kick things off, can you just give us a quick 1 minute
Sure,
description
sure.
of what the book is
So,
about?
so 7 years ago, I went to the board of my then employer and I said that, look, I want to be the group CEO. At that juncture, I was running three businesses. I was running the broking business, the investment management business, and the wealth management business, and all the businesses were profitable. I had turned them from the red to the black, and therefore, I felt that I wanted a new challenge. And looking for a new challenge, I requested to be made the group CEO. The board hired one of the world's leading executive search firms to test me and interview me, and that went on for several days. At the end of which, I was told by the executive search firm that there were deficits, skill deficits that I had that needed to be rectified. So, for example, I had low EQ, probably still have low EQ. I was moody, I was irritable, I was suspicious of others, and there was a list of things that I mentioned them in the book. There's a list of deficits I had, and they recommended that I get a coach to help me sort myself out. And they put forward an American coach based in London and a German coach based in London. I chose Anna. Anna was a German coach based in London. I thought she'd give me very little homework. That's why I chose her. But I was wrong. She gave me lots to do. But that 6-year journey of learning from Anna, being coached by Anna, working on my weaknesses, addressing my weaknesses, going deeper into what I really want out of life, that journey resulted in Marcellus being created. That journey resulted in, I think, some of my skill deficits being rectified. There's still lots of things I need to work on. The last chapter of Unfiltered talks about the areas I'm still weak in, which I'm still working on. But Anna and I thought that journey should be shared with others. There are millions of people out there who are bright, hardworking, probably brighter than me, harder working than me, but who would also benefit from getting a coach. There's many benefits to getting a high quality coach. We explain those in the book. And our journey of the last 6 years is captured in Unfiltered, the CEO and the coach.
Right. No, Saurabh, that's actually a very commendable task, not just the book writing process, but the fact that it takes a lot of courage to kind of own up to something like, some being on such a big scale, being told that you have certain deficits and things so personal such as EQ and you being irritable and managing people. And I mean, I'm sure the journey in itself was very testing and difficult, and that's why the book has come about. But writing about it in itself must have been a very difficult
So I
task, I'm
think
assuming.
any writing which is inward looking, Siddharth, any writing which is inward looking is harder because when
Mm,
you're
mm,
analyzing other people, right? So for example, in my
right,
preceding book, Diamonds in the Dust, I'm
right,
analyzing other companies, and that's far easier for people like me, for analysts like me. Anything where you have to hold the mirror to yourself is obviously much harder. But as we wrote the book, and as Anna shared her thoughts in the book on how she had coached me, I actually realized that just hearing,
mm-hmm,
reading Anna's writing on me, how she had tested me. There's certain psychological tests that you have to go through. There are scores associated. A lot of people think coaching is wishy-washy. It's anything but. It's actually there's plenty of mental frameworks and quantitative tests that I use to coach people like me. As I went through that, as I reviewed that, I actually
right,
realized that that there's actually benefit even for me to read about my own coaching experience. So leaving aside the fact that it was difficult,
Right.
I think Anna and I came out with benefits. Not least, we became very good friends whilst writing the book. She continues to live and work out of London. I continue to live and work out of Mumbai. But we came out of it richer, wiser,
Right.
better for the experience. And we also came out of it realizing that, hey, if only we could open up this whole process to millions of other people who could benefit from coaching, but who never knew that there was something such as coaching, right? Where well-developed scientific, psychological
Right.
frameworks are used to help decision makers, managers, CEOs become the best version of themselves. So we benefited personally. We hope that those of you who get a chance to grab a copy of Unfiltered can also take some of that benefit away with you and develop your careers faster, better.
Right. Hey, Saurabh, just two quick, actually, the first one's a quick question, the second one's a bit different. Could you just give us quickly an insight into how your sessions were? Were these in person? Were they over Zoom? I mean,
So
what kind of exercises were they
So the first
involved in
6
this?
months of coaching, there were a couple of in-person sessions. So I went to London for at the beginning of the assignment, and then halfway through the first 6 months, Anna visited Mumbai for a couple of days. She spoke to my colleagues. She watched me at work. Then I left my previous job. I set up Marcellus. Then unfortunately, COVID hit, and through COVID, it was more on Zoom. In the second last chapter, in chapter 5, we've actually explained how those Zoom sessions work. And think of the Zoom sessions, or indeed think of an in-person session, a little bit like the psychological version of what you go through when you go to a trainer in the gym. Right, the trainer in the gym pushes you physically. Right, you know that the trainer in the gym has your best interest at heart, but he or she pushes you physically. A coaching session is very similar. So, for example, one of the things I was very poor at
Right.
till 5-6 years ago was negotiating with people I didn't like. I was very good at negotiating with people I liked, but if I didn't like somebody, I would make a right royal
Right.
mess out of the negotiation, and it would probably end up with a fight of some sort. Right? Anna coached me to deal with those situations, and these were very difficult coaching assignments because she's
Right.
pushing me to do something I don't really like. Negotiate successfully with someone that I
Right.
don't like. And in chapter 5 of the book, we have described how those sessions work out, how Anna is
Right.
pushing me, how I'm kind of avoiding the psychological phenomenon. It's called avoidance. I'm trying to avoid the issue, but she as a coach pushes me back into a negotiation situation that I don't like. I try to avoid it. She pushes me back in, right? So it's a bit of a psychological boxing match,
Right.
psychological version of what happens in the gym. But we've described it in the book. We did
Right.
it through Zoom during COVID. But again, she visited our offices last week. Last week, I got coached face to face. And therefore, given the issue of her being in London, I'm in Mumbai. Most of the coaching takes place on the screen like this. But honestly, the lack of presence in the same place, I think, is the least important factor now. All of us have become so familiar with living lives on the screen that the lack of the fact that we are in two different cities is actually relatively unimportant now.
Right. Hey, before I go on to the next question, just a quick word for everyone out there. If you have any questions for Saurabh, you can drop them in the comment box. We will take them right at the end. Saurabh, the next thing that I was actually thinking about when I was, just reading about your work, and actually ever since we spoke about it during the podcast, right? How would you distinguish coaching from therapy, right? I mean, because it's, that's something I plan on exploring through this conversation. But the idea of coaching is relatively, like, as you said, right? It's slightly inaccessible for, let's say, the lesser elite part of society, right? More, like, say, middle class India, largely a good chunk of India is not someone who can kind of get in touch with a life coach or afford one to begin with. But so that's the second part of our conversation. We'll get there. But the first bit is, how would you distinguish it from therapy or just counseling of sorts, right? In terms of what actions you take or the kind of guidance
described
you
in the
receive.
book, right? So my wife and I migrated to India in 2008. Our son was 6 months old when we migrated, and the subsequent year we became parents of a daughter as well. So 2009, 10, 11, 12, we were raising a couple of toddlers in India, a country where I had never worked before. and I took charge of a loss-making business. That was the business I ultimately turned around. But those years, 2010, 11, 12, was super difficult, right? We were raising two kids in a city where we'd never lived before or worked before. We didn't have too many friends and relatives in Mumbai in those early years in Mumbai. And I was in charge of a loss-making business. I'd never before that turned around the business. I'd done a startup before. I built and sold a startup, but I'd never turned around the business. So that early stage, as I've said in this book, a lady called Dr. Sharmila Banwat played a big role in helping me deal with it, right? So that was therapy. Sharmila is a psychologist. She's very good. In 2 books ago, in Victory Project, we have profiled Sharmila in our practice. I think she does an outstanding job in the suburbs of Bombay, dealing with stressed out executives like me and giving us a rational frame of mind to deal with life's challenges, right? So therapy is largely about psychological issues, right? So what typically happens when you're under a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, you stop being rational about things, right? You start seeing the world irrationally. Therapy has a huge component of making you rational. Executive coaching is very different from therapy, and life coaching, Siddharth, again, is very different from executive coaching. Life coaching will have things like work-life balance. For example, I've not yet had work-life balance. Perhaps one day I'll need a life coaching as well. Executive coaching is about specific business issues. So, for example, I gave you an example, which is you need to negotiate successfully even with people you dislike, right? That's an executive coaching assignment. You need to delegate work effectively to groups of people who might be 2, might be 20, might be 200, right? That's an executive coaching assignment. You need to figure out how to apportion your diary between meetings which are important but not urgent, and you need to do less stuff which is urgent but not important, right? That's an executive coaching skill. So executive coaching has a very practical aspect which pertains to your professional life. And typically, for those who are watching, your company should be willing to pay for your executive coach. An executive coach will make you a better professional, a better executive, a better entrepreneur. And typically, your company, your employer should be willing to pay for it. If you're running a startup, as I was when during much of the Unfiltered coaching assignment, if you're running a startup, then you'll have to figure out how to incentivize the executive coach, because when you're running a startup, you don't have as much cash as you might want to have to pay the executive coach. But if you're working in a relatively large company in a middle management to senior management role, typically the company should be willing to pick up the tab for your getting a high quality executive coach, because as I've explained in the book, it makes a huge difference, right? It makes a huge difference. Say, for example, take an example. So say if you're VP sales in a relatively substantial Indian company, if your negotiating skills are amped up, your delegation skills are improved, the company you work for will benefit to the tune of tens of crores easily. A part of that can be the executive coach's compensation. And one of the points I emphatically make in Unfiltered, one of the points Anna makes, and the book is endorsed by some of the world's leading CEOs. One of the points they make is that if you're a bright, hardworking, high potential individual, it is almost inevitable that the company can get a lot of benefit from getting you an executive coach.
Right. No, that's a very, firstly, thank you for clarifying that, life coaching and executive coaching are
and therapy is different
things,
from coaching.
because I think, right. Yeah, of course, right. That being a given. What, I think, I was mistaken about it, as I was assuming there might be a lot of other people out there about this as well. Something that I'm quite curious about, and I think, given that, you run your chief investment officer at Marcellus, you manage a substantial portfolio, and you at the same time also enjoy a reasonably good fan following among retail investors in terms of your investment thesis, right? And given that you've written all these, a bunch of your books are about this. How has executive coaching helped you as an investment officer? I mean, you did explain how it helped you in terms of running your business better, right? But the actual core of your business, has that been sort of affected by your coaching at all? Or do you feel that kind of bit is insulated from you as Saurabh as an executive versus Saurabh as an investor?
So if you think
portfolio
about it,
manager.
right? If you think about it, managing money, managing other people's money, right? So we manage the money of say 10,000 families such as yours, Siddharth. Managing money has at its core
Mm-hmm.
staying calm under intense pressure, right? Because fundamentally everybody has access to the same
Right.
information. Everybody can watch the same financial news channels, read the same annual reports. What differentiates the best from the rest in terms of investing is how calm can you stay under pressure. And through the turmoil of COVID, given firstly the financial impact that COVID inflicted on Marcellus initially, the first couple of months of COVID, the financial impact on Marcellus was enormous. And then as COVID wore on, the emotional impact COVID impact inflicted on us. Several of us lost friends, parents, relatives to COVID. Staying calm, managing thousands of families' monies through those dark, difficult days. I don't think I would have been able to pull it off. Had it not been for what Anna had trained me to do. So fundamentally, I think in any high pressure job in corporate India today, in any high pressure job, Siddharth, you're asked to deliver at your highest level of competence and when you're under greatest pressure, right? What we just put it in cricketing parlance. What Virat Kohli does in some inconsequential one-day international with Bangladesh, in Ghaziabad, nobody will remember. What everybody will remember is in the T20 World Cup, in the 19th over against Pakistan, how did Virat Kohli deliver? That is the nature of professional life. It's when you are under your highest pressure that everybody's eyeballs are at you, and that's when you're supposed to deliver at your highest level of competence. I think most of us need executive coaching to be able to deliver under those sorts of circumstances. In a way, that was why those preparatory years running into COVID felt like a preparation for COVID. Even to the current day, if I come to the current day, we've been for the last 18 months or so, we've been underperforming. And there's a lot of people shouting, saying, Marcellus underperformed. The old Saurabh would have been, shouting and raving and ranting about this. The new Saurabh says, yeah, that's the way of the world. We stay rational. We do our job. That I stay calm. The team stays calm. My family stays calm. And we carry on living relatively normal lives, regardless of how much money we're managing for how many people.
Right. That's a very interesting way of looking at it, Saurabh. But coincidentally, just a question that popped up yesterday. One of my friends runs a startup, and I was, I just happened to mention that I'll be doing this Instagram live today, and we were discussing just very briefly the book, and he made a very interesting case about, not an interesting case, just a point about how, according to him, the idea of executive coaching, as you mentioned earlier, like the tab being picked up by the corporate you're working at, or if at a startup you kind of figure out how to go ahead with the compensation. His idea was not just about executive coaching, but let's say mid to upper level management upskilling, right? In that sense, broadly, that it is very difficult in a modern day society to kind of see the rewards payout for doing this so with your management, because there's often an ability to jump ship very quickly, right? Like the moment you kind of upgrade, say a mid management professional, he or she undergoes say executive coaching about something for a while, and say it gets completed within 2 months, they jump ship for a more lucrative offer, right? And obviously, they're not entirely wrong. I mean, everyone deserves to be paid what the market deems fit. But the idea being that from a management perspective, and as you are also running a company in yourself, how do you justify the costs in that
Relatively easy,
longer run? You did mention that a person
screen
spends
out people who are greedy. So greedy people have no place in Marcellus, and we have a very clever way to screen them out, and we're very successful in doing that. So most of my colleagues have been working with me for 10 years. Some of them have been working with me for 20 years. And there's a straightforward way that we have developed. And again, I've explained that in chapter 4 of the book. There's a chapter called "The Leader's Hard-Won Lessons." I've explained how as Anna coached me, I realized that getting rid of greedy people And making sure I was not surrounded by greedy
Mm-hmm.
people was an important element to creating a high quality work environment. And in Marcellus, we've
Right.
created a recruitment system, especially at the senior level, which weeds out greedy people, short-termist people, so that
Right.
we never pull them into the fold. As I said, most of my colleagues have been working with me for a decade or more. I myself have changed what 2 jobs in 20 years, and most of this, I agree with you. A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
change jobs, but उनका जिंदगी में कुछ खास हो नहीं पाता है. Just jumping from job to job for pay rise, and that's a lovely point you make. If your
Right.
CV is characterized by lots of job hops, then why should any company invest in you?
Mm-hmm.
You're left to yourselves, and then you could keep looking forward
Right.
to the next pay hike and the next career jump. But as you can figure out, that's a pretty destructive way to live careers. Most successful professionals that I can see in India, most successful CEOs of companies,
Mm-hmm.
companies that we invest in, they are lifers in the same company. So, for example, if you take some of India's most
Right.
successful companies, just off the top of my head, I think Amit Single, the guy who runs Asian Paints and does a great job, has been a lifer in Asian Paints. TCS for the last 40 years has been run by 4 different CEOs. All of them are lifers in TCS. CK Venkatraman runs Titan, incredibly successful company. By the way, when I say successful, these companies have delivered thousands of X returns, not the conventional paradigm ki double ho gaya,
Right.
triple ho gaya. Asian Paints, for example, has delivered 23,000 X in 40 years. As I said, the people who run Asian Paints typically spend their
Right.
whole life in Asian Paints. CKV at Titan, I think he's been there for 25 years or so. If you move over to say HDFC Bank, Sashi Jagdishan runs India's most successful bank. He's been there for 25 or 26 years. So if you look around corporate India, the people who characterize the engines of great corporate success in India, people who spend decades, sometimes their entire career, working in a company, creating enormous wealth for shareholders, becoming wealthy and successful themselves. And they are the definition of
Right.
long-term greedy. They also want to be successful, but they're long-term greedy rather than, as you put it, Siddharth, this job-to-job jump karte raho. In which case, as you rightly
Right.
said, why will the company pay for your training? Why should they even pay for you to sort of have food at the company canteen?
Right. Right. Sort of taking a step back from the idea of how executive coaching help you with its purpose of becoming a better business manager or just being a better at upper level management. Did any of this percolate down to your personal life as well? Like your executive coaching started, because a lot of the issues that you spoke about, right? I can very clearly, you mentioned you had toddlers, right? And something as basic as negotiating. I know it's very different when you're negotiating for business as opposed to say negotiating with your toddler to feed him or her, say, spinach. I don't know. But have you noticed
So you'll
any
have to,
particular effect of
so
your
those who
executive
want to
coaching
figure
on
out
your
the
personal
impact
life?
on my personal life, will have to read the book chapter 5. In chapter 5, I did a survey of my
Right.
family and my friends and my colleagues to figure out in personal life the impact kya raha hai. Put it like this, I don't think my wife
Huh.
would be allowing me to do this Insta on her iPad using her earpods unless kuch fayda dikha hota. She would have probably thrown the book at my head and said, "Kuch kar le." But yeah, for more details, please read chapter 4, chapter 5 of Unfiltered.
Okay. Okay. That's going to be something that we keep there and there. So beyond this, so now that you've been through 6-7 years of this process, is what I want to understand from you, because the thing is, for me, it's just as new a concept as understanding your journey through it, right? Is this an ongoing process, or
And it's
does
very
this
similar to
see like
sports
a
coaching, right?
possible
You can't be a top flight
like
tennis player
yeah,
or cricketer or footballer without a coach, right? And the reason a coach is required in sports is there's 3 sorts of problems that sports people have. One is blind spots. So even if you're a legend like Virat Kohli, you end up with flaws in your technique that you don't see, but the coach sees. So pehla hai blind spots. Same problem in corporate life. I had blind spots. I didn't know what they were. In chapter 2, Anna explains the techniques, the psychological techniques she used to identify blind spots in my skill set. Dusra hai, you see yourself in a certain way, you see yourself possessing certain skills. A coach comes in and immediately says, boss, ye tere paas skill nahi hai. There's a skill gap, there's a skill gap you need to work on. So, for example, if you take, say, the Indian cricket team, Shreyas Iyer, very successful player in first-class cricket, very successful IPL player, but it's only in international cricket that only when he's come to international cricket that the coaches have worked on his weakness with the short ball, right? Similarly, my weakness in situations where I don't like the other person, what can be done? What are the mental frameworks I need to use to deal with that? And the third set of skills is brand new skills that you don't have, but you don't know how to build, right? So if I am an Australian player and I know I don't know how to play spin, I won't just because I don't know how to play spin, I can't sort of watch a couple of videos and start playing spin, right? I need a spin coach. Similarly, in corporate life, if, say, in my case, if I don't know how to run a company with 1,000 employees, and I don't, I'll need coaching for that, right? So there are three different areas, just as in sports, so as in corporate life. Just as you can't achieve success in elite sport without a coach, I don't think you can succeed in the elite levels of corporate life in a globalized economy without a coach.
Right. Just before we move on to our last question, a quick reminder to everyone, please, if you have any questions for Saurabh, just drop them in the comments or use the question tab. So Saurabh, just one last question from my end. So now, again, given that you've experienced a lot of success with this process, and that you've advocated for firms to do so, have you instituted a policy at Marcellus to kind of have this sort of grooming?
And wherever we are invested in companies, we're invested in around 30 companies. We're also encouraging them to look at this seriously. I think it's desperately required. Our country is a high pressure country. It's growing very fast. It's a diverse country, right? We all know how diverse it is. Diverse, high growth societies and high flux. That's a recipe for extreme skill. You need extreme skill to win in India, which is why Ravi Venkatesan wrote this lovely book, Win in India, Win Everywhere. Right? But win in India karne ke liye, you need coaching, you need help. And the smarter the coach, the more receptive you are to coaching, the more likely you'll win big in this vast free market economy.
Right. So sort of without obviously divulging anyone's names and respecting the privacy, could you share like any success story of this program that you instituted within Marcellus or any of the investee companies that you have, like where you've seen a noticeable?
My colleagues write their own books. You'll get their books in the years to come. And in our investee companies, I think it'll be a little unfair if the companies themselves make their announcement, right? Unko khud bolne dijiye.
Right. No. I meant something that you noticed on from your end in your company itself. Like say you had someone
there are companies that we've gone and
go through the coaching.
Taken it up. I'll let the company make the announcement. From our part, we're very happy. Right? We've identified certain companies where succession planning was an issue. We felt that the leader had to anoint the next generation, get them coached, get them trained, so that when the leader was no longer in the picture, we as shareholders would be confident about the quality of the CEOs, CFOs taking charge. Delighted to see that some of the companies that we've invested in, where we made the suggestion ki coaching lagaiye, that suggestion has been deployed. Coaches are at work. We can see the improvement in the executives, and hopefully at the right time when the succession takes place, those companies will make it public as to how their executives, their top team skill set got ramped up. Courtesy using high quality coaches.
Okay. Well, thank you, Saurabh, for doing this with us. This is lovely hearing your experience. I can't wait to read the rest of the book. And honestly, that's something I'm really looking forward to as a person who's running a small business of his own. You've actually inspired me to kind of consider executive coaching, and maybe someday when I can afford to do so for my employees, I might probably do so for them as well. And
thank you, Saurabh. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for giving me the chance to talk about what's been a life-changing journey for myself. Anna Lungberger is in London, but those of you who want to read about her skill set and how she helped me change, Unfiltered, the CEO and the coach, is available on Amazon, courtesy support of many people who I suspect are on Insta at the moment. It's gone to #1 straight at launch, #1 on the Amazon HR list.
Thank you. Congratulations on that, Saurabh. And the books, as he mentioned, is available on Amazon, Flipkart, all your e-commerce website, or at bookstores near you. Please
Thank
head
you very
over
much.
there, check it out, and buy
Thanks
it
a
up.
lot. Good
Thank you,
night.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Good night.